We're learning Likkutei Sichot, volume 2, Parshas Bamidbar. We're on page 2, chapter 4. And what we saw last week, the first time we learned Bamidbar was, and it's actually fitting that we learn Bamidbar, because Bamidbar is always read before Shavuos. The only problem is that in Eretz Yisrael we suddenly have this extra week. So really the problem is not with Chutz La'aretz. Chutz La'aretz is following what the sages said.
Right.
The problem is here.
That's why they didn't join them up with us
Right.
earlier.
So now we've solved that mystery that we've been going on with for something like 10 weeks or something. Okay. Chapter 4. So we saw so far that minyan, meaning counting, does not designate any kind of importance on what is being counted. Rather, he said that there's no accident here. That regarding counting, the fact that it does pertain to something that does have importance in this case, so that the counting does do something, so there has to be a connection here, meaning again that the act of counting itself is not meaningful. It doesn't give meaning to what's being counted. But in this case there is meaning to what's being counted. So it says there must be a connection here, meaning that the Torah commanded, the first command in this book of Numbers, is to count, is because it does designate something about the importance of counting. So what would that be? So let's see. So chapter 4 says, אלא שדבר זה עצמו טעון עברה, מאחר שהעניין לעצמו הוא עניין חיצוני שאינו קשור כלל לתוכן הדבר. על ידי ממש משמש הוא כלי לביטוי התוכן והחשיבות. But if you're going to say that even though the counting itself does not impart the meaning on what's being counted, since something important is being counted and then it imparts meaning to the counting, so how did the counting become a vessel for that meaning? Because we said that the act of counting itself doesn't impart meaning. So how does it become a vessel for meaning? So he says, קושי זה היה יכול להיות קיים, לא היו כמות ואיכות שני דברים נפרדים. So now he says, to understand this, we have to go back to first principles. And the first principles are what we call quantity and quality. So when we say something is important, we're talking about its quality. When we're saying that counting is an act, we're talking about quantity. And what we're saying is that quantity and quality are not necessarily related. That's the first type of thinking we have about this, that quality is not a derivative of quantity. If you have a lot of one thing, doesn't mean that it's important. For instance, there's a lot of sand in the world, doesn't mean it's important, just because there's a lot of it. So we tend to think that quality and quantity are two separate things. שאז אי חשיבות, שהיא איכות, יכולה להתבטא sorry, this is a mistake, should read שאז אין חשיבות, שהיא איכות, יכולה להתבטא במניין. So then you would say that quality cannot be expressed by quantity if there's no connection between them, like we just said about sand.
That's corrected in one of these books.
Yeah, it's corrected here also, but I didn't understand the first what they corrected. But כאן מדובר בבני ישראל בענייניהם שהם גוי אחד בארץ, כפירוש בעוד קדושת אדמו"ר הזקן נשמתו עדן שבני ישראל עושים גם את הארץ, עניינים ארציים, דברים גשמיים וחומריים לאחד, כאילו אחדות השם. But here we're talking about the children of Israel, the Israelites, the Jewish people. About them, the Alter Rebbe said, they are called one nation in the land. And the meaning he says is that even the mundane things, the things connected to the land, they make one, meaning they connect to godliness. They reveal God's oneness even in mundane things. So Bnei Israel koshrim kamut ve'echut. So here we have an exception. Sand does not have a connection, does not create a connection between quality and quantity. But by the Jewish people, it says there is a connection like this. And this is a famous thing that the Rebbe later developed a lot. Right? But this is one of the first times he talked about it. This is from 1954. So 1954, this is probably one of the first times he talks about his thesis about quality and quantity. And he made a big deal about it years later, and it shows up in many letters, and it's very it's ubiquitous in his writings. לפיכך יכולה לדידה מהאיכות להתבטא גם בכמות. So in such a case, where you have something that has an integral ability to create oneness, so the oneness is also between the quality and the quantity. So the quantity can become a vessel for the quality, meaning the quantity, their number, their count, can become a vessel for their importance.
I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean by that.
Be more specific. What do you mean?
I don't understand. What are you trying to prove?
I'm trying to say that normally, if I would bring you all the sands, all the grains of sand in the world, there would be no importance in it just because I brought all the grains of sand. It wouldn't become important. It would just be a pain to store somewhere. But it wouldn't become important because of that. So counting how many grains of sand you have is not going to make it any more important. It's as unimportant as it was when it began. So what do you do? So he says that normally there's no connection between quantity and quality. But he says in this case, the act of counting doesn't impart the quality, but it becomes a vessel for the quality. That was very important. Chapter 5. משום הקשר בין כמות לאיכות אנו רואים גם כי כשמתווספת הכמות באה על ידי כך תוספת גם באיכות. Chapter 5. משום הקשר בין כמות לאיכות, אנו רואים גם כי כשמתווספת הכמות, בא לידי כך תוספת גם לאיכות. So now we've already established that there is a link between quantity and quality. So if the quantity increases, the quality increases as well. לפי ההלכה, הרי במקום שמצויים 10 מישראל, מבלי להתחשב באיכותם של 10 אלו, אם רק הכמות היא של 10, שורה שם השכינה. So one example of this, and this is a well-known example, is at the moment that you have 10 Jews, you don't look at their quality, you don't ask how good they are or how anything they are, learned or intellectual or anything like that, or how much tzedakah they give. The moment that there are 10, you've established a certain level of quality. Right? And the divine presence is there. Akol b'yasra shchinta shalya. That on every 10 Jews, the Shekhinah
shines.
Dwells. ואפשר לומר שם, דבר שבקדושה, דבר המעבר, שפה באיכות. And then you can say things that you can't say in other places, like Kaddish, for instance. So that's an increase in quality. The increase in quantity, when you went from 9 to 10, changed the quality of the air in which you are now present, where you are. כך גם ההלכה לגבי זימון. The same thing is true about zimun. After you finish eating. 3 שאכלו חייבים לזמן. 3 people that ate together have to say zimun. 10, but if you have 10, they have to add. צריכים לומר אלוקינו. ולפי דעות במשנה, 100 צריכים לומר השם אלוקינו, and so on. And if you add to 100 and then to 10,000 and then to 600,000, this also changes the language of the zimun. שינוי בכמות יוצר שינוי באיכות. So a change in quantity causes a change in quality. So this is a very strong proof that what he's saying is right. That we see that halacha sees it, that a change in quantity causes a change in quality. משום שכמות ואיכות קשורים הדדית ובכמות מתבטאת האיכות. Because quantity and quality are connected mutually. And quantity becomes a vessel for quality. Chapter 6. כן הוא גם בעניין קיום המצוות. The same thing is true about mitzvahs in general. העוסק במצווה פטור מן המצווה. One person who's engaged in one mitzvah is generally patur. He's exempt from an obligation to do another mitzvah at the same time. כשאדם עוסק במצווה כלשהי, הוא פטור גם מן הגדולה שבמצוות. וכלשון קלות שבקלות וחמורות שבחמורות שווים. So when a person is engaged in one mitzvah, we don't ask how important is the other mitzvah. We don't ask the question how much does it weigh. We'll say what is its importance. We only ask whether it can be done by someone else. That's something entirely different. We don't care what the other thing is. The other thing could be
If
something
it's
very
because
small, could be something very big.
If it's pikoch nefesh,
That's not a mitzvah.
save a life.
It's not a mitzvah. Pikuach nefesh just annuls the entire Torah. We're not weighing a mitzvah against a mitzvah anymore. It's like all bets are off. It's a new table. Everything's new. The moment they have something like a life-threatening situation, something else entirely. Here we're talking about you have a normal situation. You're engaged in one mitzvah, and somebody comes and asks you to do another one. So it doesn't matter how big the other one is. You don't come and you say, because the other one is more important and has more quality, then I now will stop whatever I'm doing, and I'll go and do the other one. You don't do that. That's called osek ben mitzvah, patur min mitzvah. Yeter aleken. Moreover, העוסק במצווה פטור בשעת מעשה גם מתלמוד תורה. A person who's engaged in a mitzvah, like for instance davening, okay, he doesn't have to learn at that time. In fact, he's not allowed to in some parts of the davening. Even though learning Torah, אף שמצוות לגבי תורה נחשבות כגוף לגבי נפש. Even though we have this metaphor that we use to relate the Torah to other mitzvahs, that the Torah is like the soul, the psyche, and the other mitzvahs are like the body. So you can't have a body without a soul. It's like not a person. So in a certain sense, you could say maybe this is another case of what we would call a life-threatening situation. Because if he doesn't learn Torah, how's he going to be alive? So maybe he should stop whatever mitzvah he's doing and engage in learning Torah, because it's more important in a very... וכאיברים לגבי האדם הוא הנפש שבאיברים, דבר שהוא בדוגמת כמות לגבי איכות. You can say that this is quantity versus quality. מכל מקום, שעה שעוסק אפילו במצווה קלה, פוטרתו זו בשעת מעשה מתלמוד תורה, שכן כאמור בכמות מתבטאת האיכות. It says, and still, even in cases like this, when you have a very light mitzvah, I don't know what it would be, like a very light mitzvah. I don't know. It's not in the Ten Commandments. Neither is learning Torah, by the way. It's very interesting. Why is learning Torah not in the Ten Commandments?
Ten Commandments are not
because we understand that.
dealing with things like.
Because we understand that without learning Torah, you can't understand even the Ten Commandments. It's a prerequisite for all of it. In the same way that, but it's interesting because to believe in God is in the Ten Commandments. But that's also a prerequisite. So why is it not? Why is that in and the Talmud Torah isn't? In any case, so when he's engaged even in a light mitzvah, it exempts him when he's engaged in it from learning Torah. And the reasoning is that quantity is an expression of quality. So even though this mitzvah itself is lighter, but the quality of the entire Torah is expressed in the quantity of the mitzvahs. So the 600, they're all equal in this sense. And so even though they're all, so you treat them as if they're all the same. You're saying, yes, the quality of the whole point of doing mitzvahs is in one as much as it's in the others. Okay? And so that's how they become equal. That's his thinking. Chapter 7. Similarly, we see in Matan Torah. When the Torah was given, in Matan Torah, we needed to have at least 60 ribo, or 600,000. There's no word in English for ribo. It means 10,000. Other languages have it. I understand that Japanese and Russian have a word for 10,000. ואילו היה חסר אחד, גם כשאחד, זה היה הפחות משבע דני. If one was missing from the 600,000, the Torah could not be given, even if this one was the lightest person, the most insignificant person, as it were, from the tribe of Dan. לא היה הקדוש ברוך הוא נתן תורה, Hashem would not have given the Torah, אפילו לגדול שבגדולים, even to the greatest of Jews, like Moshe Rabbeinu. משום החיסרון בכמות של 60 ריבו. Again, it's not that he wouldn't have given the Torah itself. The Torah itself, even the Avos knew the Torah itself. What we're saying is that event, the experience of Matan Torah, of standing in Mount Sinai and receiving this prophecy from God that we call the Ten Commandments, that would not have happened. The Torah itself, of course, we would have had, even to a single individual. This is not a problem. ובדוגמת ברכת חכם הרזים שדרושה לשם ככה כמות של 70 מיליון. And we also have a special blessing that we say when a person sees 600,000 Jews together in one place. He says a special blessing, the one who gives wisdom, no, Chacham Razim, gives wisdom to the secret. That's hard to translate it. And for that you need 600,000. And you can't estimate, you can't guesstimate either. You have to know that there are 600,000 at least exactly. עניין הפיקודים, chapter 8, שבספר במדבר קשור גם בעניין הדגלים, בנוגע לדגלים, מסופר במדרש שבשעת מתן תורה עברו ישראל למרכב המחנות על מלכים עשויים דגלים גדולים, התחילו מתאבים לדגלים. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה, לך עשה אותם דגלים כמו שנתאבו. So the counting in the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, is also connected to the banners that they had, that each tribe had its own banner. Where did they get this? The Medrash says that during the experience of Matan Torah, this great experience that they had of hearing the Ten Commandments, they also saw, because Hashem, it says, descended as it were. So what happened was that the supernal realm became revealed in the mundane realm. And so they saw that the angels and the hosts of the supernal hosts, they were divided into banners. So in general, it says that they were divided into 4 banners. Where did they get 12? I don't know. It says they were divided into 4 banners, 4 camps. But they wanted banners, and it ended up being that each camp had 3 banners also. I don't know if there's an equivalent. Maybe once I read it in Torah Shlema, but I don't remember what he said. In any case, so that's where it came from. כשם שלמתן תורה נחוץ היה מספר 60 ריבות דווקא, כך גם לגבי הדגלים שמקורה במתן תורה יעצור באותו מספר נמנה של עניין זה. So by extension, what we can say is that since the whole experience of Matan Torah, of Hashem coming down and revealing the Ten Commandments and the supernal hosts required 600,000. So you can say the banners require 600,000 also, because that's where they saw them. כמאמר רז"ל שמספר דגל מחנה יהודה הוא כמספר המלאכים של מחנה מיכאל ובאמצעות הכמות דווקא נוצרת החוץ. So here also he only mentions a whole camp of 3 tribes, in this case Judah. It has under it Reuben and Shimon. So they're not Reuben and Shimon. It has under it Yisachar and Zvulun. So all 3 together are also mentioned in Parshas Bamidbar. It says how many Judah had, how many Zvulun had, and how many Yisachar had. And then it says how much the whole camp had together. So this also was something that was dependent on quantity, and from the quantity came the quality. So the bottom line is, chapter 9, Ha'ora mikach, what we learn from this. Hataya'et, now in our times, it's very interesting. Was this even discussed before the Rebbe started discussing this question of quantity and quality? Are they connected? And how are they connected? I don't know what the answer is. But the Rebbe made it into a big deal. But whether it was discussed before, I'm not sure. But he says now is the time. It's sort of like, because this has become an issue, I'm raising it as an issue, he says. So since I'm raising it as an issue, even if nobody else had raised it before me, so now is the time that this becomes important. So kamut nogat yoter ma'yichut. We're living in times, modern times are such that quantity has greater weight than quality. That's a big statement. Pretty huge. יש על כן לדאוג להכנסת מספר רב ככל האפשר של יהודים לדגלי ומחנה ישראל. So it's incumbent upon us to ensure that as many Jews as possible come under the banner of the camp of Israel. מבלי הבט על מצבם האיכותי, without looking at their quality. So we're going to be favoring quantity over quality. You have to understand the stages he went through here. He started with quantity and quality are seemingly not connected. But from the fact that the Torah asks us to count the children of Israel, we understand that there is a connection. What's a connection? First connection we said is that the quantity becomes a vessel for the quality. The next stage was that he came and said, it's not just that the quality is expressed in the quantity. It's that the quantity has something in and of itself, because you see that the quantity changes the quality that can be expressed. And the final stage, as he says, the quantity is actually more important than the quality. And it follows a little, because we saw that quantity can do something the quality can't. So even if you have 9 of the holiest Jews together, but you don't have 10, you don't have a minyan. So there's something in the quantity that, so why not just start from there? Why not just say that in the beginning? Why not just say that? That's the simple argument. The simple argument is that because there are 9 Jews cannot make a minyan, no matter how holy they are.
Perhaps if you wouldn't have gone through the argument, you could disagree with that statement and say that it's incorrect.
No, I think that the reason is because it wouldn't be connected to Parshas Bamidbar. But no, it could be that it's deeper than that. But still, he's saying it in the context of Parshas Bamidbar. So in Parshas Bamidbar, you have this thing of just counting people. There's no question in Parshas Bamidbar, quantity is king. Quality doesn't show up. Nobody talks about quality in Parshas Bamidbar. That's why it's so boring to people. They don't. You saw how people were during the Torah laning yesterday.
Same as every week.
Okay. The people who pay attention a little bit were not even paying attention yesterday. If you ask anybody, name one number, any number that was mentioned. Tell me the order, if you don't know it from somewhere else, tell me the order of the tribes in the camps and where each. You wouldn't. Most people don't. Which part of Shevet Levi was counted in, or was entrusted on its duties in Parshas Bamidbar?
Not Aaron.
He is.
There were dots over Aaron's there.
I've said it, that's in the other. He's not counted amongst them. I'm saying who was entrusted with his duties. Because 2 were and 1 wasn't.
Kohos.
And? So the only way to remember is remember what Naso starts with. Naso starts with Merari. So it must be the Gershon was. But again, why is it? Because people don't listen. Why don't you listen? Because there's no quality there. It's all quantity. It's all talking about quantity. So I think that in a certain sense, that's the reason why he says it here. But he could have started just with the question of a minyan and said, look, quantity has something that quality doesn't. And now I'm telling you that quality in our age is more important than quantity in our age is more important than quality. חשוב בעיקר עצם העניין של הכנסת יהודים לאוכני ישראל, כיבוש האדמו"ר הזקן המאמר הז"ל, הכל ב10 שכינות השריה, שגם כשאין 10 אלו עוסקים בדברי תורה, מאחר נמצאים 10 מישראל שכינה שורה. והוא הדין לענייננו. So, again, go back to this thing of minyan, because in the end that's where it's really proven from. So yesterday we were for Brengening, and I heard a story from Avramo Levitansky. Do you remember Avramo? He was a shaliach in what he called Simcha Monica, in Santa Monica, because he didn't want to say Santa, whatever. Very, very special yid. Had had a very, very difficult life, and everybody who knew him, there was 2 of us that knew him. I know him actually quite well. He said that one thing he didn't have in his life was mazel. But it was Makar tremendous amounts of Jews in Los Angeles. And he passed away, I think, 6-7 years ago. So I heard a new story from him, and I hadn't heard this before. That somebody from Borough Park called him up in advance. He says, I'm going to be in Santa Monica and I need a minyan for my yortzeit. He said, do you have 10 Jews that keep Shabbos? He says, come, everything's fine. He'll come in front of the Amud, he'll say, everything's fine. So the guy comes in the morning and he says, I hate to ask you again, but are you sure that, because he looked at the people there, they didn't look like they kept Shabbos. He says, today's a Tuesday.
What's Shabbos going to do?
What?
What's Shabbos going to do with the price of cheese?
He wanted Jews, that's what he understood in Borough Park. In Borough Park they teach you that if they don't keep Shabbos, they can't be part of a minyan. Which may be actually true.
So he says today's Tuesday, they've got 5 days to do Jews.
So that's what he said to him. Today's Tuesday. On Tuesday everybody keeps Shabbos. That's right. What do you do on Shabbos is a different question. But now on Tuesday they're all keeping Shabbos. שכינה שלו, אבל עם ענייננו, עצם הדבר שתהיה כמות גדולה יותר במחנה ישראל, יבדק גם באיכות ותבוצע הכוונה שנתבע הקדוש ברוך הוא להיות לו דירה בתחתונים. So by the fact that we'll have more quantity of Jews together under the camp of Israel, meaning that they identify themselves as Jews, then that will cause a change in quality and will be able to fulfill the purpose of creation, which is that God craves to have a dwelling place below. Aval yesh ladat, he says finally, shemipsacha lo titalam, that you're not allowed to ignore your own flesh. What does this mean? You also have to work with yourself, not just with others. It's not just bringing others under the wings of the Shekhinah. מוסבר רואה במדרש שבשעת מתן תורה לא היו חרשים ולא סומים וכל בעלי עניינים אחרים רחמנא ליצלן, הכל נתרפו. ראוי לדעת שיש לבוא למתן תורה בשלמות האיברים, כולם בלי כל מום. Because everybody was healthy and whole and complete at the giving of the Torah. The same should be true as much as we can today. So when we come to receive the Torah in 7 days on Shavuos, so we also need to make sure that we are as whole as we can be. When it comes to another person, you don't have to get concerned about the fact that he's not completely of the highest quality. You have to bring every Jew to hear the 10 Commandments. עליו לדעת את חשבון מצבו ונפגע מאיזשהו יש לתקנו, לתקן את חוש הריח, חוש השמיעה וכו'. So if a person has any blemish in any of his senses, he should fix them before Matan Torah. So we finished the first part. We'll continue tomorrow, God willing.
You didn't comment on